Now, in a special report.
Indicated thunderstorms producing heavy rain across the Warren area.
It's just devastating.
Area communities are rebuilding after the flood of 2018.
Residents in Reedstown saw record floodwaters over Highway 14 for the first time.
We visit the dams that flooded Vernon County.
Also, serious flood damage in Monroe County after more than 10 inches of rain fell.
And it's not just Monroe County. I'll take a look at flooding trends across the area.
Plus, communities pulled together to help their neighbors.
Hundreds of volunteers helped out at some points, opening up their own homes to flood victims.
A News 8 special report, Community Rising, the flood of 2018, starts now.
Hello, and thanks so much for joining us for this News 8 special report, Community Rising, the flood of 2018. I'm Mike Thompson.
And I'm Martha Koloski. It was almost 1 month ago. Communities throughout several area counties were devastated by major flooding caused by 9 to 13 inches of rainfall in some areas and rivers that crested at record levels.
This week, the Federal Emergency Management Agency is touring our area doing damage assessments. The rainfall caused flash floods that washed out roads, triggered mudslides, and led to evacuations.
In the first 24 hours of this weather event, the hardest hit counties were Vernon, Monroe, La Crosse, and Houston. In Vernon County, there were about 350 rescues done in a 24-hour period beginning August 28th after heavy rain began falling, creating flash flooding in the area. This number does not include evacuations. Within that same time frame, 46 roads were closed throughout the county, and there are about 18 roads still closed. And the Kickapoo River saw historic crests, with the community of Viola recording the highest mark at 23.72 feet. That mark is nearly a foot above the previous record.
Monroe County also saw damage in many communities, including Leon and Melvina. At least one person was evacuated from a home in Melvina. The National Weather Service reports 10 to 13 inches of rain fell in southern parts of that county, prompting the flash flood emergency. Monroe County is estimated to have more than $4 million in damage.
In La Crosse County, flash flooding impacted the southern part of the county. The highest total rainfall was in St. Joseph's Ridge, where they had just over 11 inches of rain. Near Goose Island, a few dozen people had to be evacuated because of rising water along Highway 35 and County Road K between La Crosse and Stoddard. And
in Houston County, Minnesota, Hoka was one of the hardest hit communities, impacting Como Falls Park, where Thompson Creek flooded, carving a new path through the park. The National Weather Service says 4 to 9.5 inches of rain fell in Houston County, with Hoka getting a total of more than 7.5 inches.
The News 8 storm team worked around the clock tracking the storms. Throughout this half hour, Storm Team 8 meteorologists Corey Malice, Bill GRAUL, and Michelle POEDEL will show us what conditions led to the extreme devastation in some of the hardest hit communities.
We're going to start our team coverage with meteorologist Michelle POEDEL, who takes a look back at the beginning of this storm during the late night hours of August 27th.
Yeah, if you remember back to before all of the rain started, it was very warm and very humid. We were getting all of this moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico. Well, then the jet stream set up just to our northwest. The jet stream is basically a road for storm systems. This is what they travel along. So we had one storm system come through, then another, getting all of that rain on top of the same places over and over again. And that is what caused the flooding. Now I want to take a look at some of these rainfall totals. These are the heaviest ones from this event. Nearly 13 inches of rain in Cashton, Westby picking up just over 12 inches, 11.16 in Hillsborough, St. Joseph picking up over 11 inches. Nearly 10 inches of rain in Ontario, where this photo was taken, and just under 10 inches in Lafarge. So all of this water had a big impact on communities, water in basements, just ruining farm fields, but also all of this rain had a big effect on area rivers, and especially the Kickapoo River. Right now, Storm Team 8 meteorologist Bill GRAUL is going to tell us a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, those higher totals that you just shared were confined to areas south and west of La Crosse. Take a look at these rainfall estimates of where that heaviest rain fell. And where you see those darker lavenders, purple and pink colors, that's where as much as 8 to 12 inches plus, even 13 inches locally in a few spots. So any rivers, creeks, or streams in these areas were impacted hard and significantly by this heavy rainfall. For example, the La Crosse River saw some high water levels, also Coon Creek through Coon Valley, but especially a hard hit was the Kickapoo River. That heaviest band went right through the headwaters of the Kickapoo, so all of that heavy rain flowed into the Kickapoo River Valley, and that's what caused the significant flooding all along the Kickapoo River, all the way from Ontario downstream through Steuben. Check out some of these crests that were set in late August. Ontario, 28.5 feet. That is 6.5 feet above the old record set in 2008. In fact, most of these old records were from 2008. Lafarge, 19.4 feet. Viola, 23.7, Reedstown, 23.2 feet, Soldiers Grove, 21.1 feet. That was the only spot that did not set a new record crest, thanks in part to a levee system built around the town. Gaze Mills and Steuben also setting new records. So unfortunately, folks along the Kickapoo River saw water levels higher than they had ever seen in recorded history. Mike and Martha?
Thank you, Bill. Coming up later in our show, Chief Meteorologist Corey Malice tells us what we can expect when it comes to future flooding events in the area.
Communities along the Kickapoo are no stranger to flooding, but this year those record floodwaters tore through areas residents have never seen before.
In our continued team coverage, News 8's Jordan Fremstad and Sarah Tamer take us to Vernon County to tell us about record-setting rainfall and broken dams which led to major flooding. We start our coverage in Reedstown.
The Kickapoo River crested at 23 feet. To put that into perspective, where I'm standing, this was completely underwater. And it's something its residents have never seen before.
Doppler radar indicated thunderstorms producing heavy rain across the Warren area.
Nothing has ever hit this area like that.
Emergency management calling us, wanting to know, okay, how high is the river going to get here?
The night of August 27th is a date many communities want to forget.
It came up so fast.
10 inches of rain fell in Vernon County.
We call them training thunderstorms. So they just go over the same area over and over nonstop,
creating a recipe of desolation.
The Kickapoo broke records at almost every site.
It was just a huge wave of water that you could hear.
The village of Reedstown was right in its path.
2 o'clock in the morning, it was over Highway 14 out here, which has never happened.
People were stunned when they were asked to leave their homes. Village President Chad Larson says people who never experienced flooding before had no choice.
Not even living in the floodplain, and to have your home ruined, that's a tough pill to swallow.
The river crest in Reedstown broke the 2008 record by nearly 4 feet.
People underestimate the power of water.
The water has receded, but the stress on the community continues to rise.
FEMA doesn't just show up tomorrow with a check and say, here you go.
There is a glimmer of light on the surface of the water.
It's amazing that this area, nobody was hurt.
But there's no way to sugarcoat the scar left on this fragile community.
We're pretty used to flooding, but yeah, this type of impact was never before.
The impacts of this flooding would not have been as drastic if the infrastructure that's designed to keep disasters like this from happening would have been able to hold Mother Nature's dark force.
I'm standing in what used to be the Lucason Dam on the border of Monroe and Vernon County. One local farmer here tells me all this damage may have been prevented. Looking out to what's left of his family farm.
All the buildings, anything that was there is no longer.
Tucker Griedebeck of Cashton is recalling one of the toughest nights of his life.
We knew we had a lot of rain, and the first thing we wanted to do was run down and check on the cattle. And when we were coming down the road and looking over the bank, I saw sand out in the field, and I just had a feeling that everything was gone.
Everything from their dairy farm pasture to tractors, wagons, and sheds, all of it now gone.
My heart just sank and couldn't believe it.
Like Tucker and his wife Becky, it's a tough reality for many others in Vernon County. The impact of broken dams.
This dam was already full of water, should have been a dry dam, probably would have been just fine,
Director of Vernon County Emergency Management Brandon Larson says the Jersey Valley and Millsna dams caused much of the devastation.
The one technician I talked to checked on Jersey Valley about 3:30, 4 o'clock, and it was still intact, and he came back at 6 and it was gone.
The damage cost in Vernon County for public infrastructure is about $20 million. It's roughly $5.5 million for businesses and about $12 million for residential homes.
There are families that still can't get back into their homes. They're staying with family or friends right now. We've lost, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of investment and time.
Take a look at this. This is what's left of Tucker and Becky's pumpkin patch, which they tell me is their main economic engine in the fall. This is all that's left of it. They also say if it was up to them, the dam wouldn't be replaced, but they may not have a say. For now, reporting on the border of Monroe and Vernon County, I'm Sarah Tamer for News 8.
The Jersey Valley and Millsna dams have not been officially inspected yet, and it's unknown at this time whether they will be repaired. The money to fix the dams would come from FEMA.
The severe infrastructure damage also creates a concern for personal property owners. Vernon County Emergency Management is encouraging homeowners to test the wells on their property. The County Health Department distributed between 75 and 100 free water testing kits. So far, they've tested about 40 of those. The Health Department says they did find contaminated water in 1 out of every 3 private wells.
There's some that have, bacteria or stuff in them, and they're telling them to bleach their wells, or if it's a well, and to get it cleaned out. There's processes to go through to clean it up.
As far as municipal water, the Director of Emergency Management says there are no issues with any water supplies in any of the county's villages or cities.
And we hope you'll stay with us coming up next.
In addition to housing, several farmers lost their crops from the flooding. Find out how one local farmer is recovering.
Welcome back. Flash flooding caused major damage in parts of La Crosse County.
The southern third of the county, from the town of Shelby to Greenfield to Washington, has significant damage. Radar estimates show between 5 and 11 inches of rain fell in that area. The La Crosse County Emergency Management Coordinator says there is more than $1.3 million in damages throughout the county, and that number is still climbing.
Certainly a lot of highways. The State Road 35 was impacted for a while. It was closed for a while, water running across it. Burlington Northern lost a section of the railroad track from the flash flood from this very same creek, just a little bit further downstream. And it's just a lot of damage to roads, bridges, culverts.
La Crosse County will apply for federal aid. However, it will take months before the county knows how much money they will receive.
As FEMA assesses the flood damage to area counties, Monroe County officials continue to gather estimates. Right now, the county sheriff says there is more than $4 million in damage.
News 8's Scott Behrens continues our team coverage with a look at how flooding affected some farmers in Monroe County.
So you know what's coming, but there's not much you can do about it.
Jordan Olson, a farmer in Leon, watched floodwaters wash away nearly half of his crops.
It's a feeling of helplessness.
Olson bought his farm 2 years ago, and for the second year in a row, flooding has ruined his harvest.
What really bothered me the most is we had a great year going. We had a great corn crop, soybean crop, the vegetable, everything was going wonderfully.
Within a matter of hours, the river rose more than 15 feet. Putting all of this corn behind me completely underwater.
We can't sell any produce that has been flooded or damaged. It's just not safe to eat, so it's a total and complete loss.
And even though Olson lost a lot of time and money, he says things could have been much worse.
It's extremely disappointing, but I guess I feel worse for a lot of my neighbors who had their houses destroyed and real property damage. Crops are one thing, but your house and all your possessions are much more valuable.
In Leon alone, more than a dozen houses are now uninhabitable.
Between last year and this year, yes, this is the worst I've ever seen.
Locals say last year's flood was bad, but this year's was much worse.
The same houses that was damaged and businesses that was damaged this year, they just got back on their feet and watched it all wash away again. it was a miracle that nobody got hurt or killed.
Olson says the threat of flooding won't stop him from doing what he loves.
I'm definitely not going to give up, and I don't think any neighbors or farmers around here will. We'll just adapt to the situation and try to make the most of it next year.
In Leon, Scott Behrens, News 8.
Agricultural producers who suffered crop or livestock losses should contact their local Farm Service Agency office.
And you can find the office in your county by going to this website, offices.usda.gov.
Across the border in Minnesota, Houston County felt the impacts of heavy rainfall.
Well, there were reports of 4 to 9.5 inches of rain, which prompted a flash flood emergency. Como Falls Park in Hoka was severely damaged after Thompson Creek flooded and carved a new path through the park. The rebuilding process began about 3 weeks ago, and the water has already started flowing through the falls again.
As families start rebuilding their lives, grant money is available for flood survivors with damaged homes in La Crosse and Monroe counties. KICKAPOO, a nonprofit organization that serves low-income families, continues to accept applications from people who need repairs to or replacement of their homes as a result of the August flooding. The organization is helping to distribute money from a $2 million grant.
A lot of the people who've been calling our offices, they have homes that are not able to be lived in, or they have critical damage done to their home, and most of the people contacting us did not have flood insurance.
You can apply for grant dollars by contacting KICKAPOO at the number on the bottom of your screen.
There will soon be another way for flood survivors to apply for free money. The Fight the Flood Benefit Concert and Donation Drive in La Crosse collected $223,000 in donations, and that total is still climbing. The September 13th event was organized by several community organizations, businesses, and local bands. The Rotary Works Foundation plans to announce how to apply for funding in the coming weeks.
Coming up,
you guys scared?
We'll hear from an emergency crew worker who helped rescue people from their Lafarge homes after high water flooded their town. As you've seen, the extreme flooding in our area caused major damage to homes, businesses, and the local farming industry. But what it did not do is take anyone's life.
Our team coverage continues tonight with News 8's Lisa Klein, who shows us how local rescue efforts helped to save hundreds of people from the floodwaters.
Martha and Mike, there were no fatalities. That fact has been celebrated by several local emergency agencies. However, in the first 24 hours of the flooding, in Vernon County alone, 350 people were rescued. This is body cam video shot by a conservation warden with the DNR during the water search and rescue mission in Lafarge. The wardens used 2 boats to help more than a dozen other Vernon County emergency agencies pull people from their flooded homes.
The current was ferocious coming off of the main river. And as we motored through town and we saw buildings coming off of their, one building coming off of its foundation and floating around essentially, we realized it was a pretty dangerous situation.
McCann was the driver of the boat in this video. He and his partner helped rescue almost 24 people in Lafarge and Viola.
Our role of this was so minor. I mean, we literally picked people up and dropped them off on shore. And then when they got to shore, all their problems were still ahead of them. Like, where did they go that night? What stuff do they have? Who takes care of them? And then they have to go back to their house when the river goes down and then take care of those problems.
This is McCann's 18th year as a conservation warden. He says he has never seen anything like our recent flooding.
Thanks so much, Lisa. The DNR was one of 16 emergency agencies in Vernon County which helped bring people to safety.
Because of the magnitude of the flooding, some community members were forced to leave their homes forever.
And for those families whose houses were destroyed, they were welcomed into a new home by people they had never met before. News 8's Mal Meyer explains how the worst circumstances brought out the best in strangers.
Gary and Barbara Kromke were at their home in Chaseburg when they were forced to flee.
We had a call at 1:30 in the morning. We had to get out.
They stayed in their car all night, waiting to see what happened to their home.
I don't think we slept for 30 hours.
When they returned, their house was destroyed. They lived with a family member for 2 weeks. That was until their daughter saw a post on Facebook.
This is a house that we had purchased to serve individuals who are capable of living independently.
Steve Campbell works for an organization that offers services to people with disabilities. His wife posted on a flood cleanup Facebook page that the property was available as a temporary home.
Their daughter Deb had responded to that, saying that their parents had lost their home in the flood.
When they got to the home in Westby, they found it filled with furniture, all donated.
There's no words for it, I guess.
This entire arrangement wouldn't have been possible if it hadn't been for Paula Pratt's initiative.
I thought, well, wouldn't it be neat if we could find very specific needs and team the people that have the needs up with those who are wanting to help.
She created the Adopt a Family program to do just that. Within 24 hours of posting the idea on Facebook, she had 60 people contacting her as volunteers to help in any way they could.
After week 1 and we hit 75 families, I realized, okay, this is bigger than I can handle.
The program is now being run out of the Viroqua Church of Christ.
I have more support than I ever imagined.
She's thrilled to be the middle person for the Kromkes and so many others.
That's really what this is all about, networking and helping people feel like there's some hope.
As for Gary and Barbara Kromke, they say they'll stay here until they can figure out where they're off to next, to which their hosts are happy to oblige. In Westby, I'm Mel Meyer.
The organizer of the Adopt a Family program says it will continue to run until it is no longer needed.
Anyone in need of help is welcome to contact the Viroqua Church of Christ at this number, 608-637-3549. Well, this type of significant flooding is becoming more common in some of our local communities.
And News 8's chief meteorologist Corey Malice researched major flooding events in our area to find out if we can expect more of this in the future.
Mike and Martha, heavy rain and flash flooding are as much a part of our area's climate in the summer as cold and snow is during winter. According to data from the National Weather Service, more than 40 major heavy rain and flash flood events have been recorded since records started in the late 1800s. What is becoming more clear is these events are increasing in frequency and in severity. Since 2007 in the tri-state area, we've experienced 16 major events. Several of these could be classified as 100-year events, producing record-shattering rain and flood crests, especially along the Kickapoo River. The big question is why? The answer is not a simple one, but we can look at a couple of factors. First, we live in an area that is extremely vulnerable to heavy rain and flash flooding. We're surrounded by steep bluffs and deep valleys. Many of these valleys contain small creeks and rivers that run through them, as well as many communities. Torrential rainfall runs off these bluffs into the creeks, turning them into raging rivers, flooding surrounding land. Just like a row of falling dominoes, those flooded creeks make their way to larger river systems, causing even greater flooding. Our changing climate also plays a role. Climate scientists estimate the planet has warmed more than 2 degrees Fahrenheit since 1900 and continues to rise. We also know that 6 of the hottest years in the United States have occurred since 2000. These years saw temperatures from 1 to 3 degrees above 20th century averages. According to Jeff Boyne, a meteorologist with the La Crosse National Weather Service, those warmer atmospheric temperatures are starting to affect the frequency of our heavy rainfall events and flooding.
Actually, we are seeing stuff as far as climate change. Warmer atmospheres lead to more water vapor into the atmosphere. More water vapor ends up leading towards more heavy rainfall events. If you look at the Midwest over the last couple of decades, we've been seeing about a 35% increase in heavy rainfall events across the region. These are when they're talking about the heavy rainfall events, they're talking about the top 1% of rainfall events.
Now, it's important to understand that climate change doesn't mean we'll see more storms. What it means is that the storms we do see will have the capability of producing heavier rain, and unfortunately, the majority of climate scientists are in agreement that these types of events will become more common, not just around here, but around the United States.
Thank you, Corey. And we are going to continue the flooding trend conversation live on Facebook immediately following this broadcast.
Corey Malice will be available for a live chat. You can find our Facebook page by searching WKBT News 8000.
Thanks for watching this News 8 special presentation of Community Rising, the flood of 2018.
Have a good night.